Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Hybrid Strategies for Today's New Normal, sponsored by Equinix Government Solutions on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today are David Catanoso, the Director of Enterprise Cloud Solutions Office at the Department of Veterans Affairs, John Hale, the Chief of Cloud Services at the Defense Information Systems Agency, David Peed, the Vice President and General Manager at Equinix Government Solutions, and Cameron Cherry, the Federal Chief Technology Officer for Dell Technologies. Now, just before break, Cameron, you were offering us three, if you will, laws, if you will, and I enjoyed them, about cloud and economics, land, and physics. Now, you went through them nicely, but I want to ask how those three laws now apply to, quote unquote, the new normal, a term we're probably all pretty much tired of hearing. But I think it's important to say that things have changed. We're much more online. Things are, the services we use, the services we provide as organizations. Talk to me about the current situation with the pandemic and how those three laws apply.
Sure. And, in the first segment, John made some really good points about that. When we look at those three laws, it really starts to drive to why I think that Suzette Kent did such a great job updating Cloud First to Cloud Smart. Because what that set was a foundation for us to really focus on what makes the most sense for the mission execution. We also, Jason, we couldn't talk about the current situation and having to move to this kind of workforce 2.0 type of strategy and framework. But we couldn't talk about that without the underpinning of cybersecurity, right? We have to do this very safely, very securely. When I think of Dave's mission, I think of the HIPAA high-tech requirements that he's got to contend with if we're doing work from home and release of patient information and data. We at Dell, we've been a remote workforce. Almost 70% of our company was a remote workforce prior to the pandemic. Because what we recognized early on was when you think of your hardest use cases first, as you work back into the enterprise and back into legacy assets, it becomes a bit easier to contend with them because your hardest use cases typically inform you of, is your cyber architecture good? Do you have the right capacity from a telework perspective? Things like virtual private networks so people can remote into the infrastructure. And then what are your security policies and how do you project those security policies out to the edge where these users might be working with or ingesting information? So I think the lead up from a hybrid cloud actually helped us prepare for this type of crisis environment. Clearly, there are gotchas we all experienced, right? Our ConOps or concept of operations may have been a bit dated on how we do it. Maybe some people were caught flat-footed and didn't have devices, which we could rapidly remediate those gaps. But all in all, Jason, I have to really give a massive compliment to our public sector, federal, DoD, and even the intelligence community, because although I know there were challenges, and there were a lot of them, it's extraordinary to see how resilient the government was during this pandemic to get people so rapidly working in this remote type of situation, wherever that may be, very safely and very securely.
And Cameron, you're being a little, there's a lot of credit that goes to vendors too. I heard from federal CIO Suzette Kent a lot, as well as other CIOs in the government who just have given tons of credit to vendors like Equinix, like Dell, like so many others who have really come through in a pinch and hasn't kind of said, well, we don't have the right contract for that. Nope, we'll get it done. We'll turn it up. We'll get you what you need to move forward. So I think kudos not just to the government folks, but obviously to the vendor community as well. And I think you bring up a really, go ahead.
Sorry, Jason. No, you're 100% correct. Listen, this is where there's a difference between the definition of a vendor and a partner, right? And it's extraordinary times when you have to have those partnerships, you have to lean on those partnerships to really make sure it happens. Because at the end of the day, a lot of us who supply service to the government, we see it much like a calling, like a lot of the civil servants do. We just are fortunate to have other capabilities, unique capabilities behind us to be able to do it.
That's actually a great segue, because I want to bring John Hale back into the conversation from DISA, because one of the things that DISA did and DoD at large did was really set up a collaboration tool that has just received a lot of good feedback, a lot of really like, oh, look what we did in a short amount of time. Walk me through that case study a little bit, but also how much of that happened because you guys were already so much into the cloud, moving toward that hybrid cloud approach?
Yeah, so good segue there. So, historically, the department has been moving applications towards the cloud. Um, we started an effort about 2 years ago called DIOS, the Defense Enterprise Office Suite or solution, and the idea there was to bring software as a service into the day-to-day desktop type collaboration services and features that you would typically expect in an office environment. Um, so that contracting action was kind of proceeding through the traditional contracting wickets. We were partnered with GSA on that, and we're working on that even today. Um, to kind of solve some of the issues around the pandemic, working with the Cloud Computing Program Office within the DoD CIO's office, we launched this thing called CVR, the Commercial Virtual Remote Work Environment. Um, and CVR is a set of commercial tools, and it's accessible outside of the DoD network. So it's one of those where we don't require users to VPN into our network to turn around to then get to commercial cloud services. So there's a little bit of a break from the way we've traditionally viewed security around our applications in the cloud. But basically, we launched CVR in a commercial environment, and mission partners from around the department can leverage it from their government laptops, from their personal laptops, from personal devices, along with their government devices, and collaborate and work effectively. And we can also work with our commercial mission partners. For those who've ever heard me brief, I've never referred to vendors. I've always referred to them as commercial mission partners. So to kind of piggyback on what Cameron was talking about there, a lot of what we've done from a pandemic perspective, where we shifted from basically 15 to 20% of our workforce teleworking at any given time to 80% plus teleworking on any given day and any given time. A lot of that, that shift has happened because we've worked very closely with our commercial mission partners, like we have on this meeting today, specifically those two, and along with some others. And we could not have gotten to that place where our workforce continues to be effective and performing their mission without working with our commercial mission partners.
Let me bring in Dave from VA as well, because you also are using the pandemic as also as, if you will, forced or giving you the opportunity to take advantage of cloud services to really push toward mission. Dave, talk about VA's experience.
So as you can imagine, it with healthcare being one of our major missions, the VA, we've taken a pretty aggressive public health approach to responding to the pandemic. And we have to provide support for all of our veterans, their families, our staff. But we also have a fourth mission, as you may have heard our secretary on several different briefings with the president talk about our need to support the non-government healthcare system as well, as a kind of a surge care force. And so we've really leaned into that mission very heavily, and taking advantage of our cloud to rapidly accelerate our ability to telework and provide telemedicine during the pandemic. So, for example, we like DoD have a lot of folks working from home on a regular basis, maybe tens of thousands, but we literally had to expand our capacity to support up to 250,000 staff members working remotely during this pandemic. We've doubled our remote access bandwidth. We've tripled our ability and capacity to provide telemedicine, literally procured tens of thousands of mobile devices and laptops and rapidly deploy them across the department so that we could get more folks working remotely very quickly. And a big part of how we did that expansion was to leverage our enterprise cloud and several different technologies. We pushed the ability to support tens of thousands of virtual desktops into our cloud, looked at streaming applications, and expanded our telehealth capacity into our cloud as well.
Now, a lot of that can happen without the network being there. So let me bring in David Peed from Equinix. David, that platform, that has to be there. That has to support, doubling of bandwidth, tripling of telemedicine, bringing on more mobile devices. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing when you talk to government customers about that need to have that infrastructure in place or put it in place very quickly.
Well, I'd like to go back to a point that Cameron made really early in the show, and just how hard John and Dave's job can be in government. I didn't serve in the military. I worked for the government for 3 years. Sometimes it could be a thankless job, and their jobs are extremely hard. And again, I think what you also in our shoes, and Cameron in my shoes, you can see when chaos is happening. I can just say during this whole pandemic, It's just been, so seamless of what I've experienced with most of our government customers. And certainly we have, some work with Dave at the VA, and then we have a significant amount of work with John and his agency. And it has been lack of chaos and just been methodical in what they've done. And we've been proud to be a mission partner. And, also working with, partners like Dell. Again, we have over 1,800 network service providers in our data centers, close to 3,000 cloud providers. We operate in 55 countries. So we're big. We provide a platform. We're expanding that platform to the edge. But, again, just kudos to John and Dave and the job they do in the government. And also, Dell is one of our top partners, if not top partner in the government. I think our solutions are very complementary. And if you look at, what I get excited about is but the people and, folks like Cameron and then Steve Harris, who runs Dell Federal. And, you got guys like Andy Kemp on the special program side. To me, it's a lot about the people, too, that the government are interested in, not including the network and your capabilities. They're also looking at the people. And, I think there's some very sharp people over at Dell.
Do you find that as you're talking with your government clients, though, that the network piece is so important to ensuring that, for instance, Dave or VA can double the bandwidth, that John Hale can get a piece of, new collaboration tool out there? I mean, walk me through what the conversations you're having with your agency customers about the importance of having that platform, that network in place.
Yeah, no, it is extremely important. I think you look at it, evolutionary versus revolutionary in the sense that, some technologies we'll call, like the iPhone, created a revolution as far as how the systems operate on cell phones, et cetera. And I think you're seeing the same on the network side. But what I'd say, Jason, is what I've seen is, we've provided the platform, at Equinix, and the agencies have added to it. So I think they always have understood it. I think they're now just executing and using it more, and understanding the increase in importance. But I think you've seen what John and David said, specifically expanding what John said, is from going from, I think, 20,000 or 20% users remotely to 80%. And I think they've done it seamlessly. So I think the knowledge and the understanding and utilizing the network was there. I think they're just, utilizing it more. And I think, again, for us being the underpinning, where, close to 2,000 where those networks reside, it makes it easier for agencies like VA and DISA to do that.
One of the things that when we talk about the impact of the pandemic and the fact is that agencies have had cloud and have moved certain applications to the cloud, is there a sense, and maybe let me turn to Dave from VA a little bit, is there a sense that, okay, this was a really good example, or this was a really good, I'll use quotes here, pilot, and wow, look what we can do? Did this kind of open the door to some bigger, some broader ideas, some concepts that maybe after we get through this, when we return to kind of the old ways, if you will, that things won't change as much because you've tested these concepts out in the cloud and they've worked hopefully fairly well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to be a catalyst to moving forward even faster. I mean, we were already moving forward fairly aggressively, leveraging cloud and network as a service, as was just mentioned. We were able to adapt very quickly, and I think we've learned not only that we can operate in new ways, and we'll want to continue to expand upon that, but that we can change some of our techniques much more rapidly than we thought we could before. I mean, because of the pandemic, we had to really move quickly, and luckily we were able to do it. We had the right contracts in place and the right teams in place, and leveraging the as a service capability with that ability to scale very rapidly. We took advantage of all those things and were able to deliver the capabilities I mentioned before. I mean, we literally hit 67% increase in telehealth sessions during the pandemic, and we hit a maximum of 19,500 calls as an all-time high in one day for telemedicine. So, I mean, we really spiked the load, and we're able to handle it, I won't say seamlessly, but very, very well.
Yeah. Hey, Jason, if I could piggyback just before you move on, one of the things that we face from a capability perspective, specifically around CVR, we launched CVR as a collaboration capability as part of this whole pandemic, is, what we've heard from our mission partners who are leveraging the capability every day is, this is now mission essential, right? So at the end of the pandemic, this stuff can't go away, right? So we have to have these same type services available to our mission partners going forward, even after the pandemic. And so just simply, you know, putting these tools into the hands of our mission partners has dramatically changed the way that we do business on a day-to-day basis, and has dramatically changed their demand signal for the capabilities going forward.
Jason, if I could chime in just briefly, John really hit on something really important, and so did Dave. There's an underlying theme to both of those commentaries. I think what we're seeing is that middle management that was maybe reticent to look at these things before. I think this current crisis has changed a lot of the minds of those people to think the technology's there. We still have to be safe and secure, right? That's got to underpin everything. But I think it was a motivating factor. But the second thing is, Jason, you and I have worked a lot together. You know, I'm always the positive guy. I can't help but to be that. But the light out of the darkness with this pandemic is teaching us that there's a whole new workforce and human capital that we can gain access to that maybe had a desire to be a civil servant or work for the DoD or the intelligence community that we may not have been able to entice before because we didn't have these types of more modern, more progressive services that we're now testing. So we're getting access to this next generation of human capital while we're transforming the workforce of the government through these types of solutions and having them implement these solutions. So at the end, there's still some positive that's really coming out of it.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to expand on that. Again, I think it looks at, if you look at, this is the new norm. It won't be the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic network. It's going to be the new network. And that, you know, as I said before, I think, 9/11, I think in some ways revolutionized security in some ways, right? Where there was a forcing function, an event that happened that really, I think really forced probably a harder look at security. And I think you're seeing this in the pandemic. It's going to be a harder look at networks and the capability to do analytics, because that analytics is, for the pandemic is the key to success and opening things back up. So I think, again, I talked about the revolutionary from a technology perspective, and using the iPhone as an example. Events in the country also kind of revolutionized technology, and I think that's what you've seen with the pandemic.
All right, excellent point. And on that point, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we can continue our conversation. You're listening to the panel discussion, Hybrid Strategies for Today's New Normal, sponsored by Equinix Government Solutions on Federal News Network.